Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into habits, those little things we do every day and how they can really impact our lives. We've got some excerpts from James Clear's Atomic Habits to help us out, and some visuals too, just to make things super clear.
Yeah, and we're not skipping anything. We're covering all the key ideas from the entire chapter, research, case studies, the whole shebang. We're also going to make sure to talk about how you can use this stuff in your own life, for some really cool personal growth.
Okay, so picture this. The British cycling team, back in the early 2000s, hadn't won a Tour de France in almost a century. Kind of stuck, right?
For sure. But then Sir Dave Brailsford steps in, the performance director, and he's got this radical idea, the aggregation of marginal gains. So basically, he thought if they could improve just 1% in every area, the bikes, training, even washing hands, all those tiny changes would add up over time for some huge results.
I'm guessing it worked, right? That's kind of a famous story.
Oh, it totally did. Within 5 years, they were killing it at the Olympics and the Tour de France. Went from underdogs to setting Olympic records and winning multiple Tour de France titles. Amazing turnaround.
That's wild. Like washing your hands to avoid getting sick. Who knew that could be a game changer for cyclists?
Huh.
But it makes sense when you think about it, kind of like compound interest. Small deposits over time lead to a lot of money.
Spot on. And we've got a visual that shows exactly that, an upward sloping graph. It really shows how those little 1% improvements, when you do them consistently, create this huge snowball effect.
Yeah, it's so easy to think those tiny things don't matter, but this shows how powerful they can be in the long run. Does that mean small bad habits can add up too, though?
Absolutely. Just like the good stuff leads to great results, those little bad habits, like constantly checking social media or getting stuck in negative thoughts, they can pile up and lead to things you don't want.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that quote, what's easy to do is also easy not to do. But here, you got to be aware of both sides of that.
You said it. It's all about understanding the process, the little daily habits, the leading measures, as they're called, that actually shape the outcome.
Okay, leading measures, I'm curious about that. Could you explain that a little more?
Sure, think of it like flying a plane. You've got your destination, right? That's your lagging measure, the end goal. But to get there, you're constantly making these little course corrections along the way, and those are your leading measures.
So even a tiny adjustment to the plane's direction could mean landing somewhere completely different. That's a powerful image.
It is, and it shows how our everyday actions, those small habits, are like those course corrections. They may seem small in the moment, but they're directing us, leading us to our destination.
So it's more about those daily actions than being fixated on the end goal, the journey, and not just the destination.
Exactly. And this leads us to a really cool idea, the ice cube melting, which perfectly captures this idea of small, consistent efforts leading to a breakthrough.
Melting ice cube. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this melting ice cube.
So picture an ice cube just sitting there, the temperature slowly rising 1 degree at a time. At 25 degrees, nothing. 26 degrees, still nothing. Then, bam, 32 degrees, and it starts melting.
Ah, so it's like this tipping point where all those seemingly insignificant degrees finally create a visible change.
Precisely, and that's what can be both frustrating and rewarding about forming habits. It can feel like you're not making progress for a long time, but you're building up to that tipping point, that breakthrough moment.
So patience and persistence are key. Got to trust those small efforts are adding up, even when you can't see the results yet. Reminds me of bamboo, how it grows. It spends years underground before shooting up seemingly overnight.
Absolutely. And the book actually calls this the plateau of latent potential, that time where you're putting in the work but not seeing results. We've even got a visual for it, a graph showing a sudden jump in results after a period of flatlining. Really encourages you to keep going, even when you don't see those results yet.
This is all so fascinating. But one thing I've always struggled with, goals versus systems. Atomic Habits actually challenges this whole idea of focusing on goals, right?
Right. James Clear argues that while goals are good for setting direction, if you get too fixated on them, it can actually be harmful. He thinks focusing on building systems is way more effective.
Okay, I'll admit that's a little counterintuitive. We're always told to set goals. What's wrong with that?
Well, Clear outlines 4 key problems. First, there's survivorship bias. We only see the people who made it, thinking they had some secret formula, but we miss all the people who had the same goals and didn't succeed.
That's true. We only see the success stories, not all the others who tried and didn't get there.
Exactly. Second, goals often only create temporary change. You reach your goal, but if you don't change your underlying habits and systems, you'll just go back to your old ways.
Like those crash diets. You lose weight but then gain it all back because you didn't change your eating habits long term.
Exactly. Third, focusing only on goals can make you unhappy. If you're always chasing the next thing, you miss out on enjoying the present moment.
Always striving, never content with where you are now. Yeah, I can see how that could lead to some unhappiness.
For sure. And last, goals can sometimes work against long-term progress. You hit your goal, lose motivation, stop progressing, and maybe even backslide.
Okay, so if just focusing on goals isn't the answer, what is? What does focusing on systems even mean?
A system is basically a set of processes and habits that support your desired outcomes. So it's about focusing on the inputs instead of just the outputs. Like, say your goal is to write a book, just focusing on that can be super overwhelming.
Oh yeah, I get that. Just thinking about writing a whole book is paralyzing.
But if you build a system like writing for an hour every morning, then you're focused on the process and the book eventually happens naturally. You're focused on the input, the writing habit, not just the output, the finished book.
So shift the focus from the big scary goal to the smaller, more manageable daily actions that eventually lead to it, breaking it down into bite-sized pieces.
Exactly. And that's where atomic habits come in.
All right, I'm ready to hear about atomic habits. What are they exactly, and how do they fit into this systems thing?
An atomic habit is a tiny change, a marginal gain, a 1% improvement. It's the smallest thing you can do that still makes a difference over time. Like atoms are the building blocks of matter, atomic habits build up to big results.
So it's about small, easy changes that become significant when you keep doing them. Like
Wow.
not trying to change your whole diet at once, but swapping soda for water one day at a time.
Exactly. And you can combine those small changes, those atomic habits, to create systems that lead to amazing outcomes. Say you want to be more productive. You could start atomic habits like setting daily priorities, minimizing distractions, taking breaks.
Kind of like building a house one brick at a time until you have a solid structure. You're not trying to build it all at once, but laying those bricks consistently.
Great analogy. And this brings us to another important idea, the 3 layers of behavior change. Outcomes, processes, and identity. Like peeling an onion to see how real change happens.
Ooh, layers. Love a
Yeah.
good layered analogy. Tell me more about these layers of change.
Okay, so the outermost layer is outcomes. That's what you get, the results. Next is processes, what you do, the actions you take. And finally, the core, the identity, what you believe about yourself, your self-image.
So to change what you get, the outcomes, you change what you do, the processes.
Yeah.
But to change what you do, you got to change what you believe about yourself, your identity.
Exactly. It's not just changing what you do, but who you think you are, aligning your actions with the person you want to be.
So instead of saying, I want to be a writer, you say, I am a writer, and then act like it. You build a system that supports that, like writing every day, and those actions reinforce your identity.
Precisely. And when your actions and your identity match up, that's when you see lasting change. Those actions become a part of who you are, not just something you force yourself to do.
This is all so insightful. I'm really starting to get how important those small actions are and how they ripple through our lives.
That's the beauty of atomic habits. It gives you a way to understand how to use those small actions for real positive change.
This has been a fantastic look at the first part of Atomic Habits, but there's so much more to discover. We'll be right back to dig deeper into practical strategies for building those atomic habits and creating powerful systems for change.
So before we jumped into that last part, we were talking about how our beliefs about ourselves, that identity, is really what drives lasting change.
Yeah, it totally clicked for me when we talked about saying, I am a writer versus just wishing you wrote more. Like stepping into that identity almost makes it easier to do those actions.
Exactly. It's not so much faking it till you make it, but more about making what you do match up with who you want to be. And the cool thing is your identity isn't set in stone. It's something you can change.
Okay, but how do you actually shift your identity? It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which can be both powerful and a bit scary.
James Clear talks about 2 steps. First, you got to decide who you want to be, like what values do you have, what do you stand for. Then, and this is the important part, you prove it to yourself with small wins.
So if I want to be a morning person, but I hit snooze like 5 times every day.
Start by setting your alarm just 10 minutes earlier and actually getting out of bed when it goes off. That tiny act of getting up is a win that tells you, hey, I am a morning person. And each time you do it, you make that belief stronger.
It's like building momentum, one small win at a time. Like each action is a vote for the person you're becoming. I love that.
Right, and those small wins are where the magic of atomic habits comes in. Remember, it's not about huge overnight changes, it's about those tiny, consistent choices that match up with who you want to be.
Okay, we get that identity is important.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Changing who you think you are and building new habits can be hard. There are days when you're just not motivated and you fall back into old patterns.
Oh, for sure. That's why having a system to back you up is so important. James Clear outlines these 4 laws of behavior change, a framework for making good habits easier to do and making those bad ones harder to stick to.
Ooh, I love frameworks. They give you actionable steps, a way to actually put things into practice. Tell me more about these laws.
The first one is make it obvious. It's about being more aware of your habits and setting up your environment so those good habits are more visible and tempting.
So if I want to drink more water, I might keep a big, nice water bottle on my desk where I can see it all the time. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. Or if you're trying to eat healthier, maybe prep some healthy snacks at the beginning of the week and put them in those clear containers in the fridge right up front.
So instead of reaching for the chips when you're hungry, you see those veggies and hummus ready to go.
You got it. It's about making those cues for your good habits really stand out.
Okay, so that's make it obvious. What's the second law?
The second law is make it attractive. This is all about making your good habits more appealing and enjoyable.
So instead of forcing myself to go to the gym, I might find a workout buddy to make it more fun or try a new class that I'm excited about.
Exactly. It shouldn't feel like you're dragging yourself through something you hate. If you want to read more, make a cozy reading spot, comfy blankets, good lighting. Make those good habits something you look forward to.
Love it. Make it obvious, make it attractive. What's next?
Make it easy. This is about reducing the friction, making your good habits as effortless as possible.
Like instead of keeping my running shoes tucked away in the closet, I could leave them by the door, ready to go.
Exactly. If you want to cook at home more, maybe invest in some time-saving kitchen gadgets or pre-chop those veggies. It's about getting rid of anything that might be stopping you from doing those habits.
This is so smart.
Yeah.
It takes away those excuses like, I don't have time to cook, or it's too much effort to go to the gym.
And then the fourth law, it's all about making those good habits last. Make it satisfying. This means making sure you feel good after doing the habit.
So maybe give yourself a little reward after a tough workout. Or keep track of your progress and celebrate those wins.
Precisely. Or if you're trying to save money, you might picture your savings growing. Imagine yourself hitting those financial goals.
Associate those positive feelings with the habit itself. This whole framework is amazing. So simple, yet so powerful when you think about how you can use it for any habit you want to build.
Exactly. It's not just about willpower or being motivated. It's about setting up an environment and system that actually helps you make those changes.
This has been such a great exploration of building better habits. We've covered the power of small changes, the importance of identity, and those 4 brilliant laws of behavior change.
We've gone through a lot from Atomic Habits, but there are still some important takeaways and final thoughts to consider. We'll be right back after a short break to wrap things up and give you some actionable insights to use in your own life.
Wow, we've really been digging deep into these atomic habits. I mean, from the British cycling team's tiny improvements to that melting ice cube and those 4 laws, there's just so much to think about.
Yeah, and the best part is this isn't just some theory, it's stuff you can actually use, pretty much any part of your life you want to improve.
Right. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the big takeaway? What should our listeners remember?
I think the main thing is that those small changes we make each day, the ones that seem so tiny, they can really add up to something amazing. It's not just about building habits, it's about building a better version of yourself, one small choice at a time.
Like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. But here it's more like a bunch of small steps that get you where you want to go.
Exactly. And it's not just about reaching some big, far-off goal. It's about becoming the kind of person who can do those things. It's about building a life that you're proud of, that matches your values.
So, as we leave our listeners with something to think about, what's one question we can give them? Something to get them thinking about atomic habits in their own lives.
I'd ask, what's one small habit you can start today, right now, that can make a real difference in your life a year from now?
Maybe it's something for your health, like drinking more water or taking a walk every day. Or maybe it's for your career or relationships, like taking 15 minutes each morning to learn something new or sending a nice message to a friend.
Yeah, the key is to make it small, something you can actually do, and make sure it fits with the person you want to be. And then, the most important thing, do it consistently, day after day. Imagine where you could be a year from now if you started making those small changes today.
It's really exciting to think about how much power we have to change our lives with these little actions, these atomic habits. And Atomic Habits is such a great book for anyone who wants to learn more about this stuff.
Couldn't agree more. So go out there, try out the power of small changes, start building those atomic habits today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep growing, and remember, you have the power to make positive changes in your life, one small habit at a time.